Joseph Parker versus Alexander Dimitrenko is going to be taking place on October the 1st now. This is quite an important fight for Joseph Parker, obviously because he needs to get past this and another one before he actually gets a shot at Anthony Joshua, but also because he's going to be judged heavily on how he performs in this fight and how impressive he looks against Alexander Dimitrenko. And the reason for that is because of the similar size between Alexander and Anthony Joshua. Alexander is taller, that's 6'7". He's got a longer reach, 83-inch reach over Anthony Joshua. He's also heavier than Anthony Joshua. Doesn't have the same skill, not held in the same regard obviously as Anthony Joshua, and has a significantly lower knockout rate, 60%. But he is going to be judged on how he deals with someone of this size. So it's important he looks good and he looks impressive against Alexander Dimitrenko. Now Joseph Parker, he's ranked 8th in the world right now in BoxRec and Ring Magazine. He's the IBF #1 contender. Alexander Dimitrenko, on the other hand, is not ranked by the IBF. He's not in the top 10 of Ring Magazine, and he's only ranked 49th by BoxRec right now. But Alexander Dimitrenko is a good fighter. He was European champion from 2010 to 2011. And he was actually, a genuine top 10 fighter. He was in the Ring Magazine and BoxRec top 10 for a while before Kubrat Pulev finished him off, and he's not been fighting any real good quality opponents since then. The last opponent he's fought that was any good was Kubrat Pulev, and just like I say, Kubrat Pulev beat him decisively, especially in the second half of that fight. There was a couple of positive things worth noting about Alexander Dimitrenko in this fight. I won't pretend I've watched all of Alexander Dimitrenko's fights. I've watched a couple before I did this breakdown video, and two names that really jumped out at me when I looked through his fights were Timo Hoffman and Derrick Rossi, the wins against them. It wasn't so much he beat them fighters. If he was a good fighter at the top of his game, he would beat them kind of fighters, but it was the way he beat them. Timo Hoffman fought Vitaly Klitschko when he was still undefeated, when Timo Hoffman was still undefeated and the European champion. And Vitaly Klitschko, although he won every round against Timo Hoffman, he couldn't stop him, and this was before Vitaly Klitschko's first retirement, so it's when he still had a lot of punching power. And he couldn't stop Timo Hoffman, and Alexander Dimitrenko, yes, even though Alexander Dimitrenko has a 60% knockout rate, there's more than one way of judging punching power, and he managed to stop Timo Hoffman in the 12th round. And I watched that fight, and they were genuine knockdowns, and the ref called it off because he was just taking too much punishment. And also with Derrick Rossi as well. A lot of people will know Derrick Rossi for fighting Bermane Stiverne in Stiverne's last fight after he lost to Deontay Wilder. And Derrick Rossi gave Bermane Stiverne a lot of problems. He won a lot of the rounds in that fight, and he knocked Stiverne down in the first round. And Alexander Dimitrenko stopped Derrick Rossi in the 5th round. He knocked him down twice again, genuine knockdowns. Ref called it off again. One other thing, it's something worth noting with Alexander Dimitrenko. Something else as well is, yes, he did lose to Eddie Chambers, but it was a very close fight. It was a majority decision that he lost to Eddie Chambers in. It just depends how highly you actually regard Eddie Chambers as a fighter. Some people say, yeah, he used to be exceptional, and some people just say he was never that great to begin with. Now, one of the questions you got to ask is, how has Joseph Parker got on against people of Alexander Dimitrenko's size before? Has he fought any good ones? Well, the biggest opponent he's faced is Daniel Ortiz. He's actually a bit bigger than Alexander Dimitrenko, 6'7.5". He had a 65% KO rate, but his opponents hadn't been quite as good as what Alexander Dimitrenko has faced before. And after Joseph Parker beat him, he did lose his next fight as well. But Joseph Parker had no problem with his size in that fight. But just like I'm saying, Daniel Ortiz is not the best fighter at all. He was in the top 100. He's not anymore. But Joseph Parker knocked him out in the first round. Daniel Ortiz just didn't have the skill to be in with someone as quick as Joseph Parker. The other one worth noting is Cali Meehan. Some people say, oh well, Cali Meehan's an older fighter, but there's been some good older fighters in the past. There just has. Just because you're old doesn't mean you're completely past it. And Cali Meehan's, yes, he's only an inch taller than Joseph Parker at 6'5", but he has a significantly massive reach compared to Joseph Parker. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage over Joseph Parker with a 81-inch reach. And he has a bit of power behind his shots as well. You know, he's a guy that's had quite a lot of fights, and having a lot of fights, fighting a lot of guys at the top level as well, with a 68% knockout rate. You know, you can compare that to Alexander Dimitrenko. And I think Joseph Parker stopped him in the 3rd or 4th round of that fight. Beat him quite decisively as well. Even though he's bigger, he just couldn't deal with Joseph Parker's speed. So yes, Joseph Parker has fought bigger guys before. Not as good, not bigger guys quite as good as Alexander Dimitrenko. But we'll see how he deals with him as well later. Now when we look at the skill of Joseph Parker and Alexander Dimitrenko, you know, Joseph Parker, he has great hand speed and especially in combinations. He has got a good, powerful jab. He's got a really effective, good footwork as well. One of his weaknesses though is when he finishes combinations, he keeps himself in range afterwards and leaves himself vulnerable to a counter. That's a problem I think everybody picked up on in the Carlos Takam fight. Alexander Dimitrenko, you know, he's got a good classic boxing style. He's got a good jab. He goes to the body as well, even though he's such a tall fighter. But his footwork is, I don't think his footwork's as quick and effective enough, you know, to negate Joseph Parker's speed. I think Joseph Parker's still going to be able to get at Alexander Dimitrenko quite at ease. I mean, how did I see this fight going? Well, one thing I really did notice when I looked through Alexander Dimitrenko's career, well, actually, the first thing I want to bring up is when I watched the Kubrat Pulev fight. You know, Kubrat Pulev's a good, quick fighter as well. He's very accurate with his punches, and when I was watching that fight, you could see after quite a few rounds that Kubrat Pulev's punches, you know, were just wearing Alexander Dimitrenko down mentally. You know, he was just losing confidence when he was taking in punches, and he was just getting mentally drained from them. And the thing with Alexander Dimitrenko is when I looked through his record, he's never faced a big puncher, a genuine big puncher like Joseph Parker before. You know, Joseph Parker's had quite a good number of fights now, and he's faced some good top 50 guys. He's faced someone in the top 10 before. He's still early days though. You know, KO rates go down, but 85% KO rate's quite a solid knockout rate to have at this stage of his career. So he is a genuine big puncher, and I don't think Alexander Dimitrenko's going to like it when Joseph Parker starts landing his heavy combinations against him at all. I think he's going to lose confidence quite quickly. I just see Joseph Parker just outboxing and outclassing Dimitrenko in this fight. I see Joseph Parker get into him and just, you know, wear him down with just superior boxing skills and superior speed and power, and just wearing Alexander Dimitrenko down in this fight. I mean, Dimitrenko, yeah, he went 11 rounds with Kubrat Pulev. That was the only fight that's ever been stopped. But Pulev, just like I say, is not a big puncher. I think he's got about a 50% KO rate. And Joseph Parker, on the other hand, is, and he's also accurate and he's also fast. And he throws more punches in his combinations than Kubrat Pulev as well. So I do expect Joseph Parker to stop Dimitrenko. I think I'd be actually quite shocked if he doesn't stop Dimitrenko in this fight. When, it's obviously hard to tell when the ring's going to unravel. But I would start to think somewhere from the mid to the later rounds of this fight, I can see Joseph Parker just getting to him and managing just to overwhelm and stop Alexander Dimitrenko. So that's all I've pretty much got to say.